Morning everyone, my name is James Kang. I am in 10th grade and the title of my spoken word is The Wall by Joan Jurgensen. And I have a fever right now, so I have a sore throat and a runny nose, so please understand that. Yeah, please enjoy. The wall at Jericho was an impenetrable force to any army that was trying to overtake the city. Before even dealing with the wall, the attacking troops would have to navigate their way across the 27-foot wide, 9-foot deep pit that lined the outer edges of the city. Then there was the wall itself. 17-foot high, 5-foot thick pure mass of solid stone. If the attacking army managed to get this far without being shot down by archers, all that was left was to defeat the well-trained Canaanite army that was waiting within. This was reality for a young leader named Joshua and his ragtag Israelite army. These Israelites who had seen an entire generation live and die while wandering through the desert were tired, hungry, and seemed like an impossible task. A hopeless situation. Now, I haven't lived very long, but I've lived long enough to know this, that running into a wall is a part of life. And the bigger the wall, the hopeless the situation can seem. The large walls of sickness, loss, divorce, addiction, they pop up all around us and they seem impenetrable. And just like the walls at Jericho, these walls rarely stand alone. The walls of our lives are often accompanied by a deep pit of pain, suffering, and despair, and all the while, an army of hopelessness attacks us on every side. The question is asked all the time, if God loves us so much and He's so powerful, then how can He allow these walls to pop up around me? Now, I don't pretend to have answers to any of those questions, nor do I pretend to understand just how deep or dark your suffering has been. I simply want to suggest that maybe God does His best work from seemingly hopeless situations. When I read the Bible, I read about people and characters, all who faced seemingly hopeless situations. In fact, I cannot find a single person who walked faithfully with God without first facing a hopeless situations. Adam and Eve ruined the paradise by inviting sin and death into a perfect world, a hopeless case. Joseph was betrayed by his brother and put in prison, a hopeless case. Moses were cornered on the banks of the Red Sea with the most powerful army in the world breathing down his neck, a hopeless case. Gideon was 300 against 300,000. David strode across a valley from a bloodthirsty giant. Esther was a woman trying to gain a word with a prideful king. Daniel's roommate was a lion. His friends were thrown in an oven. Jonah sucked at his job and got stuck in a whale. Peter was a coward. Paul was in prison. The 5,000 had no food. Lazarus was dead. Timothy was too young. Abraham was too old. The youngest son was so stupid. The walls of Jericho were too strong. And Jesus was humiliated, hung on a cross, and buried in a tomb, bearing all our hope of revolution that was hope for thousands of years. Now, everyone was ready to close the book on these stories. The end! Game over. But if there's one thing that we learn from the scriptures, is that we can never ever place a period where God has placed a comma. Because when all other options have been worn out, when circumstances couldn't get any worse, when everything else has failed, get ready, because that is exactly where God shows up. Because Joseph became second in command. The Red Sea parted. Gideon won without lifting a weapon. Goliath's head was on a plate. Esther spoke, and the king listened. Nineveh repented. Daniel's roommate was a lion. Daniel tamed the lion. The oven felt like room temperature. Nineveh repented. Peter became a rock. Paul rejoiced. 12 basketfuls were left over. Lazarus was just kidding. Timothy built a church. Abraham built a family. The youngest son came home to a party. And Jesus pulled off a resurrection by defining sin and death. And creation that had been marred for so many years ago was now restored for all time. With God, what seems like a hopeless situation is not only possible, it's favorable. Because only God can turn a mess into a message. Only God can turn a trial into a triumph, a test into a testimony, and a victim into a victory. His power is made perfect in weaknesses. So let us rejoice in our trials and hold unswervingly hope that we profess. Because he who promised is faithful, was faithful, and will always be faithful, no matter how hopeless the situation can be seen unto all of you.